All right, so if you think you might be interested in looking into the STEPS method, I think the first thing that I want to do for you is just show you basically how this curriculum works and what all these different books are, because it can be a bit confusing when you're first looking at it and if you haven't actually done it before. And I also put a link in the show description, the video description, with a link to a podcast, Ben Johnson's Perpetual Chess podcast, where he had a guest, Hans Schut, and he's Dutch. He's since moved to the United States, but he's a certified steps trainer, and his daughters grew up with using the steps method and became very strong. I think one of them was like 2,400 something VD or something like that. But that would be a good resource to listen to too after you watch this. But how I want to do this is first beginning here, I'm just going to show what these different books are, just a rough outline of this curriculum. And then in the second part, I'll just kind of tell you how I approached it as an adult improver and just maybe suggestions on how to approach this as adult improver. So first, what I'll do is just kind of point out that these there's a different curriculum for each step. So there's 6 total steps. So 6 would be very advanced players. Step 1 would be the basics. There's actually like stepping stones for little kids that you wouldn't need that as an adult. But these ratings are FIDE ratings. So they're usually run maybe like 50 points higher to 100 points higher than a US rating. So like, this 1900 would probably be like a 2000 player, or 1950 player in the United States. So basically, each one of these steps will have a a set of workbooks, and then it also has a teaching manual. And so what I thought I would do is we can just pull up links to these books, and it lets us look into some of them, but not all of them. And so I thought I would do is just pull up step 2 here. And what I will do is I will zoom out and just kind of hold this up to the camera because you can see it, because they don't have a quick peek section on the actual teaching manual. But so each step has a teaching manual. And what it does is it has lessons in there and explanations of how the teacher should present it to the students in the classroom. And it's got tips and stuff like that, and it's got answers to the workbooks in there, and it has like tips on what kind of things students frequently miss. But this would be the first thing you would want to do is go through the lesson. And so like in step 2, this is for getting a person up to 1400 once they're already completed step 1. But you can see it has different lessons, and they're mostly focused on tactics at step 2. And then, so they have basic lessons, and then they have plus lessons, and you would want to go through all of these. So there's 13 like normal lessons, and then there's 9 additional lessons. And so what I'll do is I'll just kind of show you, I'll switch over my screen and just let you take a peek at kind of like, you can see how kind of detailed these lessons are, and they're very well done. And so I think like as adult improvers, it's good because we got to teach ourselves anyway. So having these lessons I found very helpful when I did it. So I'm just going to pause the video here and then just reconfigure my screen so I can kind of zoom in and show you what these manual looks like for one of these lessons. And then I'll go in and we'll talk about what the different workbooks are and how they tie into the manual and the lessons. So I'm just going to reconfigure this. I'll be right back. All right, so if we look into the teaching manual, I'm just going to kind of show you one lesson here in step 2, and that is the double attack. And you can see like it has things to set up like on a demonstration board for the students. Obviously, doing it yourself, you just go through it yourself. But I'll kind of flip through the pages here. And you can see it's pretty detailed and a lot of different examples, right? So there's like 7 pages or something there. And then there's also tips and hints like on the workbooks, and that's what we'll look at next. But it just like how to address problems that students might run into, or typical things that they expect. Students might run into some of these problems. So that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is just zoom out here, get it back, my screen back, and then we'll look and I'll explain what each of these workbooks are, and then we'll transition to just tell you how I approached it and how, now knowing what I know now, how I would approach it if I were to start it over. All right. So now that we've looked at the manual and kind of see how the lessons are laid out in the manual, I just want to explain what the different workbooks are. And so, let's just say this is the index for step 2 manual. And so the first lesson would be activity of the pieces. And then if we go down and we look at the workbook, just the normal workbook for step 2, what it'll do is it will have a little summary, like usually a 1-page summary for the student, just to highlight the lesson that was presented in the manual as like a refresher or a review. And then what it'll have is it will have some test questions. And there's usually 12 on a page, and it might have like 2 or 3 pages of exercises for that section in the manual. And so if we go back up and look at like the manual index for step 2, you'll notice that there's 13 lessons, and then there are 9 additional lessons for the plus workbook. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom over to a different section here and just show you like the order section where you buy these, and I'll just kind of explain what each one of these is, but just kind of keep the snapshot that you have basic lessons and then you have plus lessons in each step, and each one has a different workbook. So just the step 2 normal workbook would have exercises for these 13 sections, and the plus workbook would have exercises for these 9 lessons. So I'm just going to zip over to the order section, and we'll just kind of explain what each one is. Okay, so if we look at the ordering section on their website here to order these manuals and workbooks, you'll notice that they have a section where you order the manuals, and what we were just looking at was the step 2 manual. And then they have different sections for the different workbooks. So the workbook basic was what we were just looking at. It's those first 13 lessons from the step 2 manual. And so that covers the lesson summary and exercises for that workbook, or for the first 13 lessons from step 2. And so that would be this step 2 workbook. And then the next 9 lessons were the plus lessons from the step 2 manual, and those are in workbook plus. So that would be this manual here, workbook step 2 plus, would have the lesson summaries and exercises for that second section of the step 2 manual, the plus section. And then if you notice, there's 3 additional types of workbooks here. And so the first additional type is this workbooks extra. And basically what that is, it's additional exercises that are just like the exercises in the workbooks basic and workbook plus. And it's just additional exercises to give you more practice. And I would recommend doing that. And then, because then you basically get almost twice as many exercises after you study each lesson. So that's just additional exercises that are just like they're tied into the lesson, just like it is on workbooks basic and workbook plus. And then there's also a workbooks mix, which is basically a workbook of exercises where they don't tell you, they don't tie it to what lesson that came out of from the training manual. So that serves as like a good test at the end of the step. When you get through when you complete step 2, it would be good to go through the step 2 mix and then you can see how well you remember the different lessons and can apply them without being prompted as to what what you're looking for. So that you would do at the end of each step. And then the other thing is for steps 2 and 3, they have a section called thinking ahead, and that is like visualization or blindfold exercises to help you visualize the board better. And that you can, I would suggest doing that, chunking it up and doing that throughout the step, independent of the lessons. And so that's basically kind of how it works. And so figured now I'll kind of just go back through and just kind of explain how I did it and how I would recommend somebody else do it. And one thing before I do that, I want to mention, they do have for the first 3 steps, they have these, they call it Chess Tutor, and it's a software program. And this I would highly recommend doing. And basically what it is it gives like a kind of a mini lesson for each of these lessons that are covered in the manual, and then a bunch of exercises similar to in the workbooks, and then additional kind of like little games you play and whatnot to help try to reinforce what you learned in those lessons from the steps. And so what I will do is I'll make another video after this where I'll share my screen and I'll just kind of show you. I have made it through all 3 of these actually, and I'll share my screen and just kind of show you what it is and how it parallels these step manuals and step workbooks. But just know that it's available. I'll cover that in the next video. But let's just circle back and look at how we would tackle this if you were an adult improver, based on various levels that you may enter steps with. All right, so I thought I would just tell you what I did and what I would change myself now that I've kind of gone through step 3. I'm almost done with step 3. But then suggestions maybe for other adult improving club players. So what I did is I just assumed that I had a lot of holes in my game, and that ended up being very true. Because I started when I was a junior in high school, and it was just kind of, we had like an informal chess club, and we didn't have any the teachers were probably all rated under 1,000, I would say. And so basically we knew scholars, mates, and some very basic things, but certainly didn't learn any like building blocks or anything like that. And then I played mostly for fun in college, would play a few tournaments, but play at the student union and kind of watch better players and picked up stuff from that. And then I took off probably over a decade, and then I started playing again and then trying to actually learn and improve at chess. So what I decided to do was just go to step 1, and I did every lesson. I did the plain workbook, the plus workbook. I did the mix. I did everything available basically. And I found out that I missed more than I would have expected even on step 1. And so personally, I'm glad I did that. And I also did the chess tutor, those software things for steps 1 through 3. And that's how I tackled it. And no joke, like I horsed the step 1 through pretty quickly. Now, you'll find that like step 3 has taken me, I've been like spending like over a year on step 3. So these things take quite a while. And that's good because then you're playing games, and analyzing your games and getting better and applying some of these things you learn when you're playing. Because I've noticed a lot, like when I'm playing a game, I'm like, oh, I noticed this tactical possibility or, something else because of these step lessons that I've done. So I decided to just go through and just hammer everything out and try to fill in any holes I had in, skills I didn't have and steps I hadn't built on, and just try to treat it like I'm building a house from scratch, just assuming that learning it basically as an adult, because I was like 16 when I learned it, is different than learning it, like when you're under 10 or something, right? Like we have different challenges now because we have already developed our abstract thinking. And so we kind of take these mental shortcuts, and, our prefrontal cortex filters everything out, and we kind of, it's a different ball game when we learn it when we're old. So I wanted to fill everything in. Now, I guess the way I would look at it is if you're under 1,000, I would say for sure start at step one. Um, if you're under maybe 1200, you still may want to consider doing step one. But what I would suggest is if you're not going to do the full step one through the workbooks, I would make use of those chess tutor discs. Let me switch over there. And what I would do is, and I'll do a next video here in a little bit. The next one I'll do just showing you these chess tutors. But what I would do is I would say, okay, well, do the chess tutor step one CD, and if you fly through it, and if you get like 90%, I would say 95%, somewhere between 90 and 95% of them right, then yeah, go ahead and just go on to step two. Now, if you find that you're missing a lot more than you would have expected, then it may be worth your time to go back and do the lessons in the workbook and the plus workbook in step one and just kind of fill in those gaps. So I think that would be a reasonable thing for an adult improver, under like 1500, 1400, say. Like I was rated higher than that anyway when I started this, and I still found I had all these holes. And after I did the entire step one with this chess tutor and the workbooks, my blitz rating went up like 150 points online. So, and I hammered it through in a short period of time. So I can directly attribute it to that. But I would do the chess tutor step one, see how you do. If you feel like you would benefit from doing the entire step one with all the workbooks and manuals, then do it. And then I would go on and start from step two. I think pretty much anybody that would be listening to me on a video would probably benefit from starting on step two and going through the whole thing. And how I did it is I did the lesson. I would read the lesson in the manual. Then I did the plain workbook or the plus workbook, depending where I was in that step. And after I got done with that, I would do the chess tutor for that section. And that gives you a lesson where they kind of recap the lesson that you got from the manual. And that would kind of reinforce what I had previously learned. And then I would do the exercises and see how I did. And if it did terrible, then I would go back and try to reread the lesson from the manual. And so that's where I'm at. I'm basically done with step three, except I haven't done the mix yet, and I haven't done the looking ahead. And that's what I would suggest is like when you get to step 2 and 3, they have this looking ahead workbook. And what I would suggest is just looking at that workbook and just trying to figure out how many pages you would need to do each time you do one of these lessons to get done at approximately the same time. I kind of made the mistake of leaving the mix and the working ahead to the end. And then I was trying to hammer in, and I still now have to hammer in all these step 3 looking ahead ones because I haven't started that yet. And I kind of wish I would have like just evenly spaced that out as I was doing the steps. And I think it would be more beneficial because then you consistently get this visualization practice instead of just like getting a headache trying to pound these in so then I can move on to step 4. But that's what I would recommend. I would, like I said, I would watch that podcast with Hans Shoot. I guess there are like certified instructors or like coaches that are certified in steps. Perhaps there's a resource listing those coaches somewhere. I can maybe look into that and put it in the show description if I find it. And I think the important thing is that you're playing games and having somebody stronger than you like look at the games once in a while and trying to pick out things that you're errors in your thought process. But for me personally, this steps has been like a godsend because before then I wasn't improving much. I was just kind of going around on a hamster wheel and jumping from thing to thing. And this puts you on like a structured program. I think if you're an adult, what you will find is you will be surprised on how many basic things you didn't know. You like understand a lot of these advanced concepts that kids don't necessarily understand because like we can think abstractly and filter out a lot of things and stuff like that. But like just like not like looking at the consequences of our moves. That's something these workbooks are really good at. You'll think you see the easy answer, and then there was like a resource for the opponent. And like as adults, we can get so hung up on thinking about these big picture things that like these kids, they see a hanging piece and they never miss it. But sometimes I'll miss like a piece that my opponent is hanging But the kids just see it as like, oh, free candy, and they just grab it. And I think that's one of the things, if you learn as an adult, these steps are like super helpful. So what I'll do, I would encourage anybody to do it. Like, I just think like, I mean, like it's just it's hard to argue. I think that you'll find like a better program put together that was refined over a number of years by strong players using it to teach um, people as they're developing as chess players. So the next one I'll do is I'll just show you these chess tutors, just to show you how it kind of ties in to these manuals and workbooks. So I'll just kind of pull up one of them and screen share it, and then just compare it to like the lessons in the manual. So anyway, I don't think you can go wrong if you decide to do these steps. Like, I'm obviously, like, I'm a non monetized site, right? Like, I know I'm never going to be like trying to make money off of this website, but so I'm not paid to say this. So I think like there's value in somebody saying what worked for them and not being like endorsed to, push something or shill some kind of new fancy product. Like, this is like known to stand the test of time and produce results. So I don't think you'll be disappointed if you do it. You could dip your toes in with these tutors, chess tutor CDs, just to see if that is for you. So anyway, good luck. Take care.